What is up, everybody? Welcome to Tuesday's Daily Betslip. I'm Wallach. Alongside me is Ben Heisler. Little trading places today. I'm going to run the captain spot today. Well, Ben's going to join me alongside. But we got a loaded Tuesday slate for you. Pair of game fives in the NBA, NHL playoffs, MLB regular season. We're talking everything at around 5:20. We're going to get into MLB's fraud or future. We're going to bring back an old segment. We're going to talk AL MVP, an AL division, maybe a World Series bet. We're going to get all into that. But before we get to anything else, Ben, how's it going?
It's good, Reed. I am excited. This is a big day for you here. The debut, not only of this feature on Daily Betslip, but also you told me just a couple minutes before we went on today that you plan to do something on this show for the first time all season long. And I had to do a bit of a double take. Like, we go through so much content. We go through all these different betting previews. We cover all these different games from so many different angles. What are you doing for the first time today on today's show?
Yeah, honey, I bet the baseball today. I don't love betting baseball. I obviously follow baseball. I bet the Mets from time to time, but I have ventured into uncharted waters for the 2022 season. I bet a baseball game. I will reveal it during the best bet segment at 5:30, but it is a total and it is a pair of NL teams. I will not reveal who, but that is where I am looking. But we're going to do baseball. We're going to do NBA game fives. I know we got sides and props there. And also our game of the night future, which I didn't mention off the start. Sixers Heat game five. That's our game of the night, starting at around 5:35-ish. If you want the community bet, make your voice heard. Vote on our Twitter page at BetSided or go, I think it's to the right of me on YouTube. Chime in on the poll. And while you're down there, also like and subscribe to BetSided because we're pumping out a bunch of great content for you. So let's get started with today's show. Before we talk about tonight's slate, let's talk about last night's slate because we had another doozy 6-run comeback, second time in the same week. It was the Guardians last night coming back down 6 in the ninth inning, not down 9-3. Down 6 in the ninth inning. They come back to win against the White Sox, who were minus 175 at home. The Guardians were 60-1 at the start of the ninth inning. Back-to-back errors from the White Sox. Like I said, 6 runs, 2 outs. There was a walk, a hit, and a Josh Naylor grand slam to tie the game up. Of course, the Guardians go on to win it in extras by another Naylor home run. He was the first player in MLB history to hit 2 3-run home runs in the ninth inning or later. Shout out at Stats by Stats for that fact. But, I mean, Ben, you weren't on the White Sox, right? I know you're a Chicago guy, but you're White Sox for you.
No, I wasn't on the White Sox because a known White Sox mush afternoon drive host, Danny Parkins, at 670 The Score in Chicago, decided to bet on the White Sox. And that was an immediate sign that I was going to be staying away. And also, I had just submitted a piece over at BetSided talking about how the Guardians, if you really start to dive into them, they were at the 500 mark, basically top 5 in almost every single significant offensive category over the course of this season. I think their run differential at that point was plus 12, and they were still just hanging around in the AL Central. And I kind of looked at them as saying, maybe this is a team that is starting to get themselves going. Did not look good. And for the White Sox, Michael Kopech off to a really, really good start in this game. Like, that's going to be a crucial part of it. But Reed, we might talk about the White Sox in a little bit, but to give up this type of a lead at home, you're struggling against the division. You had massive expectations for the season. The Tony La Russa situation is starting to get really, really more murky and bad by the day. Whew. To give up another 6-run lead, like you said, it was the second time in a week.
My
yeah. If you had the White Sox on the money line, you just hope that, okay, maybe Cleveland gets 1 in extra innings, and then, maybe you can kind of sneak away and get something. But 1 in the 10th, 3 in the 11th, and that was all she wrote.
Yeah, and so 6-run comeback in the ninth inning. I don't even know what a comparison is. Forget that it's happened twice in a week now. What is even, like, is that like, it's not Reggie Miller comeback where he scores 7 points in 9 seconds, but it's like kind of, what is it, like down 10 in basketball with like a minute left? Like, maybe college basketball happens with poor free throw shooting, but 6 runs in the ninth inning, so much needs to go wrong. Because like you said, you can maybe let up 1 run, maybe like a solo homer. You're still spotting 5. you need like a series of events to really go wrong for a team to put up 6 runs in an inning, let alone 6 runs in the 9th inning. Like I said, back-to-back errors from the White Sox. I believe they had 3 or 4 in the game because I know earlier in the game it was, I believe Gavin Sheets like just dropped a routine fly ball.
Yeah, that led to the first run of the game.
Yeah, so you're talking about like a real disaster. And again, it's happened now twice in a week. My Mets are on the right side of it, and that's 2 teams in the White Sox and Phillies that I think are falling way below expectation. First month of the season, the Phillies bullpen continues to be a concern. Now the White Sox bullpen is a concern. White Sox very banged up. So, I mean, again, if you thought the White Sox at -175 was your sweetener, get that other favorite you like down to even money. That went up in flames, and hopefully you were in bed at least and like not really, you like thought it was over and you woke up in the morning. Not a good way to start your day, but at least you're not up all night thinking about it. So I guess it's kind of it's the crime of betting on such a big favorite in baseball because it's never safe.
Right. And I'm trying to think of like the rational, like my favorite comeback in college basketball was the 2005 Illinois comeback against Arizona in the Elite Eight. I think they were down 13 with like just around 4 minutes to play.
4 minutes left?
Yeah, it was about 4 minutes left. That was near the Darren Williams, D. Brown, Luther Head team. Ended up forcing overtime, went on. Illinois ended up losing in the national championship. But I still go back and watch that game, just once a year or so whenever it's around that time. Because I grew up an Illinois fan. And I think to myself, I know what's about to happen, but I still can't process how they're able to make up that type of comeback in that period of time. This is kind of the same thing. It's 6 runs. What it had been like 338 consecutive games up until last week that a 6-run lead had held up.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it happens twice in the same week. Like baseball is a remarkable sport. And now for those teams, again, momentum is only as good as your next day starting pitcher, but you can't not think about it the rest of the season. Having a big lead, you just don't feel as comfortable anymore.
No, I completely agree.
Especially if you have that bet.
I mean, yeah, that's one of the ones where like you sit there and you're like, why am I doing this? Like, what? Like, you're kidding me. And then you have like the buyer's remorse because like you'll get runners on and you'll be sitting there and you're like, like maybe should I just take like +3.5, like -150 and like get the middle and whatever. And you're sitting there like going through the simulations. Meanwhile, Tim Anderson's airmailing another play to first base. It's like, it's just a disaster. And like, it's like being a Guardians backer. Like imagine, like I think I saw someone had the Mets last week at like 34-1. I think it was. I didn't see any tweets bragging about the Guardians because I feel like the Mets, not only do they have like a big fan base where like someone would actually tweet that, but like they also have like some belief behind them. Like the Mets are at least, and we're gonna get into this, like a projected good team, whereas the Guardians are like seen as this like middling 500 team. Like they don't, like the White Sox are better. They're not coming back, right? Like, so I feel like 60-1, no one's really that interested. People thought they were just going to play the game out.
Really quickly, because I know we got to get to best bets in just a second, but I think I just figured out the connection. So again, it's early and the Mets have a tendency to do Mets type things, but Buck Showalter is basically what the White Sox thought they were getting with Tony La Russa, except it's been the complete and total opposite. Showalter's hit all the right buttons. La Russa's hit all the wrong buttons. From a talent level, like
no, I know what you're saying.
In the same stratosphere, and Buck has fit in perfectly, and La Russa couldn't be a worse fit right now with that team.
That's well said, and we will close the book on last night's slate. We're going to move into Tuesday, May 10th. We got a loaded slate. We're going to start in that same thing, baseball. Ben, I know you have a player prop for today. We're looking in Atlanta. Pitcher Kyle Wright. Let's hear it.
So Kyle Wright is in a really, really interesting spot. And for anybody that had been following him for a little bit, you know that Wright had his struggles initially, but then he broke out in the 2021 postseason. And this year he's been absolutely spectacular. And I like him in particular on a strikeout prop tonight against the Boston Red Sox at home. It's at -135 over at WinBet. His last time out, he went 7 innings. It was the second time, Reed, that he had gone 7 innings in a row, which is great for, a young, I think 24-year-old pitcher, first round pick. So he's starting to go deeper in the games, but he only struck out 3 batters in his last game, which was a 3-1 loss to the Mets. But he has averaged 13 strikeouts per 9 innings through his first 4 starts of the season. the matchup against Boston is good, even though they strike out the 10th fewest amount of times in all of Major League Baseball. But their offense is a disaster. They're also keeping the ball around the field. It's another opportunity for Wright to go deep. And unlike last time, I think by him going deeper into games, he's still going to be able to have more opportunities to be able to pile up those strikeouts. 5.5 does not feel like a hard number to pass, considering what his strikeout rate has been over the course of the entire season. Also at home, he's been unreal. He's 3-0, 0.47 ERA. He's given up 1 run at home through 19 innings, and he struck out 25 batters in 19 innings at home. So Kyle Wright only having to get past 5.5 tonight, even though it's a little bit juiced. But I feel like this is a golden opportunity for him to go up against a Red Sox team that really has had all sorts of issues on both sides of the ball this year.
Yeah, I like it. 5.5 doesn't feel out of control. Like I remember we were on, and maybe it was a week or two ago, and we were talking about Rodon, his under 8.5. Yeah. I think he may have went over in that game, but again, it's one of those where the price is too high. This feels like the price is too low for a pitcher that's rolling this year in Kyle Wright. So I like to play. And so, Ben, are you ready? My Reed's first MLB bet of the year.
Let's hear it.
Clear my throat. It is the Rockies-Giants over 7.5. Okay. Let me tell you why.
We got an over in the year of unders.
Yes.
I need to hear this. Let's go.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to look first at Antoine Santella, the Rocky starting pitcher, getting knocked around. He's allowed 40 hits in 24 innings this year. He's allowed at least 7 in all of his starts this season. But the ERA is still low. It's below 4 runs, but it's starting to trend in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, he's now going against a Giants team that hits the ball incredibly well. They're 8th in batting average this year and 10th in weighted runs created, which means normalized across all the ballparks, they are putting themselves in a top 10 rate of plating runs. So this is the perfect mix for me to see the Giants put up a ton of runs, get runners on the base paths, get to a pretty porous Colorado bullpen, and get towards 5-6 runs. They put up 8 runs last night. The Rockies bullpen pitched 3 2/3 innings, so maybe a little tax bullpen there. And on the other side, the Rockies are facing Alex Wood, left-handed pitcher. The best hitting team in baseball against lefties? Yes, it's the Colorado Rockies. They hit .313 against southpaws, so I like them to plate a few runs. Wood's been fine this year. ERA over 4. Don't love it. Rodon, he only went 6 innings last night. We were just talking about him. Giants bullpen went 3 deep, so 3 innings deep, that is. So I kind of like both teams to get into a bit of a high-scoring affair here. They just put up 13 runs. I don't see why we can't get over this 7.5 with these pitching matchups. Ben, how is my first handicap of the MLB season?
I like it, even though I think first glance at some of these pitchers would tell you that it's probably likely to be a low-scoring game. I think you're thinking a little bit outside the traditional box score, and Wood is somebody that has that 4.38 ERA, but he has given up some hard contact this year. The Rockies have had some issues, especially with their pitching. It's funny that sometimes Colorado, their pitching actually is better inside their own ballpark, despite the fact of all the times that you're going to be able to give up some big home runs in Coors Field with the ball it's continuing to carry. So I think especially with the Giants, they have some good power numbers, but they're also able to string a bunch of hits together as well. I think the over 7.5, it's just a nice low number to climb, so I don't mind it one bit.
Yeah, and last night we saw, like I said, 8-5 Giants win 13 runs. A lot of runs scored in the back half of the game. So maybe this game kind of breaks out late. Like I said, a lot of bullpen usage last night. So maybe these Pens are a little tired. We see maybe a blow-up inning. And again, only 7.5. I'm not asking for anything crazy. I mean, it is my first bet of the year. I like to get off to a winning start. So I don't think I'm asking for too much. I think it's reasonable. I'm going over 7.5 in Rockies Giants. So we're going to swing back now. We're going to go to the hardwood. WNBA. Ben, what do we think? Is this your first WNBA play on?
This is my first WNBA bet of the season. I bet it's a
magical episode here.
Yeah, a lot of firsts for you and me here on this episode today. But a good opportunity and a really good game too between the Las Vegas Aces and the Washington Mystics, 2-2-0 teams heading into the matchup tonight. And the reason that I like the under, which is at 168.5 in this game, I think people are going to initially look towards Las Vegas and say, man, This is a team averaging 95.5 points per game. Like, they're just completely getting it going. Becky Hammon's first season, they're incredibly efficient on offense, but they were a really good offense last year. They averaged just under 90 points per game the season ago. But in opponents' point per game, they're giving up only 81. Washington is third in the WNBA, giving up only 68. They're at home. They're more likely to dictate pace, trying to slow down Vegas on the offensive side of the ball. And I think we're starting to underestimate the ability for Las Vegas to be able to play well defensively. So if they're able to get stops on Washington, and conversely, if Washington is able to use their home court towards slowing down the best offense in the WNBA, we're looking at a projection here that feels pretty high. And I've also seen at a couple other sports books too, Reed, that this number has shifted down to 167.5. So WinBet offering you a nice little bonus at 168.5 that you can jump on right now and go ahead and grab that under, knowing that you already have an extra point that you have to climb. So I like the under. Always fun taking WNBA unders for 2-0 teams, but I like it in this case for both Las Vegas and Washington.
I like the contrarian under. I don't want to put you on the spot, but has scoring been down to start the season versus, maybe middle of the season, or you haven't been able to dive that much into it? Maybe that's a question for Donovan. I know Donovan bets a lot of WNBA.
He does, yeah. That'd be a better question for Donovan. But again, I know that from the Aces perspective, their points are up. Their points are up by about 6 points per game. Same thing with Washington. Washington has gone up from just under 80 points per game to 81. So not much of a huge jump. But again, certainly from Vegas' side, like, they're running even more up tempo, taking really good efficient shots. Like, excited for what Becky Hammon is putting together there, because it's a really good efficient offensive team.
Yeah, Aces, the betting favorite to win the WNBA title. Obviously, like you said, Becky Hammon's first year. So we're going to swing it over now to the association. We have a pair of game fives. We're going to talk about the Sixers and the Heat in a little bit in our game of the night segment, but we're talking Suns Mavs first. We're going to go in reverse order. Ben, I'm going to start with you. Currently, Suns -6 on the money line, about -290, total 215. Someplace that's going to 6.5, but you have a play on the side. Which way are you leaning?
Yeah, I admire the way that the Mavs have really fought in the last couple of games of the series. In particular, I've been really impressed with how they've completely just taken Chris Paul out of the way. Like, again, we've talked about Dallas's efficiency on defense throughout the course of the season, and they're a top 3 defensive team in the postseason this year. Phoenix going back home where they're going to feel a little bit more confident is inevitable. And that Paul, especially in these types of moments, has been fairly good over the course of his playoff career the last couple of years. But I think we're now at a point where Dallas is starting to just get a little bit more comfortable and understand how to be able to take him out of his game. We also know that the Suns aren't taking the type of three-pointers that maybe other teams and other opponents will likely do. Every part of this series is trying to get Phoenix out of their spots. In the last couple of games, you've seen Dallas force Phoenix to get Chris Paul, to get Devin Booker out of those mid-range spots. DeAndre Ayton's rebounding has been down in the series as well. It just feels like it's going to be a close battle the rest of the way between two teams that, even though Vegas doesn't necessarily look at them as evenly matched, we had talked about it several weeks ago on Best Bets that Dallas to win the West at 20-1 was in play once they got Luka back. And again, if the defense holds and he starts getting a little bit more support, we've seen Dorian Finney-Smith get his over in, I think, 7 of his last 9 games in points. The complementary players for Dallas right now are doing their part. And as long as it's not the Luka show for only the first half in game 5, they're going to compete with Phoenix here. So I think it's going to be another close game. 6 just feels like a tad too much, even though I expect Phoenix to win.
Yeah, I think honestly, fantastic points. And I bet the Mavs to win the West before the end of the season. I thought they were going to be in the opposite bracket and take Golden State's spot and have a matchup against Memphis, because that was at least my ideal handicap. They ended up dropping a game and falling into this 4 bracket. But I don't know if Dallas could win this series, but they are going about it the correct way. Yes. They are saying, we're outmatched. We know we can't beat Phoenix straight up in we're going to play just Luka versus, Booker, Paul, Bridges, everyone, Aiden. We're going to try and outshoot you. We are going to try and win the math problem where we're taking more threes, making more threes, and you're going to make a bunch of 2s, and we're just going to outpace you. So even if they come up short I do believe that the Mavericks are executing the correct game plan. Of course, you can't count on these shots to fall ad nauseum, but they have showed up. And even game one, they played hard. They were hanging around, maybe closer to double digits. They made their run at the end, kind of a false scoreboard. But it was almost the opposite in game two, where they were leading in the late third, early fourth quarter before just a tidal wave of Chris Paul and Devin Booker happened to pull away. Luka Doncic tired. Then the Mavs coming home in games 3 and 4, the shots started to fall. Guys like Dorian Finney-Smith, Davis Bertans, they started to figure it out. And it seems like the Suns are now at a little bit, and I don't want to let me preface with, I don't want to overrate like recency bias of a team winning 2 straight home games, but it does feel like an adjustment is on the way for Phoenix, where DeAndre Ayton's minutes might need to start going down. And I thought he was playing well, but it seems like the Mavs are starting to marginalize him like they did to Rudy Gobert in the Utah series. And granted, Phoenix is a much better defensive team, but if the Mavs are just going to spread you out, but on the other end, you got guys like Chris Paul and Devin Booker that could still get inside and score, do you need DeAndre Ayton on the floor? I think that's kind of an inflection point in the series. So I'm not going to bet Dallas. I do think they're kind of live in this series, though. I think it might be more each team wins at home in game 5 and game 6. Then game 7, it's, well, we have the best player on the floor, Luka Doncic, and he's just going to give us one. He's just going to will us to the finish line here. We're going to, maybe tonight, maybe they can hang around, maybe it gets away from them. But I think game 6 is a similar to game 3 and 4, where they just kind of overwhelm you. And then game 7, it's give it to us. Like, this is why you're a star. Like, let's win.
Let me ask you this then, because right now you can still get series prices over at WinBet. The Suns are minus 250 to win the series. Dallas is at plus 200. I know that you already have the Dallas to win the West future going.
I think that was dead too. Like I'm like, to me, it's almost like a wash. Like I had written it off before the playoffs even started.
Well, would you advise anybody that's watching the show today who believes that, like, okay, if Dallas gets a game, or if Dallas has an opportunity, which it sounds like they will, they're going to have the opportunity tonight, and then especially knowing that they can come back to Dallas in game 6, why not take a leap at 2-1 right now? Again, it's not 20-1 like you saw in the season, but we both buy Dallas to be live. So even if the series evens up, you have Dallas at plus 200, and then maybe there's an opportunity, especially if they win game 6, for you to hedge that bet a little bit as well.
My one thing giving me pause from getting involved is if it's close late, whether it's game 6 or game 7, I feel like the Suns, they had some, I think they were like 33-10 in clutch situations this year. They were like the best best net rating team in the league. So like if the game's close, and this is why I was a little nervous before the series of taking like a Dallas bet in the series, but they might just out execute the Mavs, and like Luka might have to settle for step back threes, and then it's Chris Paul and Booker in the mid range. So I'm not going to advise a bet, but I do think, like, if I woke up at the end of this week and saw that the Mavs were in the West Conference Finals, that wouldn't be like some crazy upset, Titanic upset. But I think the price is pretty fair. Like the Suns should be around minus. Listen, they have home court and they're like around this price anyway in game 5. So I think it makes a little bit of sense, but I think the Mavs could definitely hang around and try and get some shot variance in their favor tonight. I could definitely see them covering. Yeah,
they're live, and again, their ability to play the same type of defense and slow things down, like from a pace level, like this isn't the type of series that we're seeing with Golden State and with the Grizzlies. Like both these teams are going to play a lot of half court sets. Both these teams are going to be able to try to get to their spots on the floor. Phoenix is going to go for that mid-range shot. It's, to me, like 6 points between two really good defensive minded teams just feels like a lot of ground to have to cover. Phoenix is more than capable, but so is Dallas. So if we're already looking at this matchup from an upset point of view, like Dallas is going to be in it for most of the game. They just can't let it only be up to Luka to make it happen. Like he needs his role players to step up, which they have the last couple games.
Also, Luka didn't play that well in game 4, shot 1 of 10 from 3. So maybe that could maybe turn in this one and he catches fire from 3. I'm going to give out 2 prop bets on this game. Again, I don't have a play on the side, but I like 2 Suns overs. Actually, I think coming home, they can maybe get some uplift from their role players. I wouldn't even call these guys role players. They're key cogs. But Mikal Bridges over 4.5 rebounds. That's a very cheap -104. You get that plus money at other places. But I'm just quickly going to rattle off rebound and rebound chances per NBA.com. In game 1, he had 7 rebounds on 14 chances. Game 2 was very down, 3 on 4 chances. Then game 3, 6 of 10, and then 4 of 7 in game 4. He only played 32 minutes in game 4, kind of iffy on foul trouble. I think he's going to play closer to 40 minutes in this game with this being an all hands on deck. He's one of their best players. He's one of their key cogs. I just think 4.5 is a very low mark to hit. And I also think if you're getting expected 3-point regression from the Mavs, you're going to see more defensive rebounding chances. So I think you're going to see Bridges get closer to like 9 rebound chances. And all you need is 50% of those. So I like the Bridges over 4.5 rebounds. What do you think about that?
My only concern is because from a minutes perspective, Bridges is on the floor as much as anybody, right? Like he obviously wasn't a ton in the previous game. He only played 32 minutes in the 10-point loss in game 4. But previous 5 games, 46 minutes, 44, 42, 38, 38. Like he's on the floor.
Yeah, I think he's getting that tonight.
I think so too. And he's hit that number, like you said, in 2 of his last 4 games. So the minutes will be there. My only concern about Bridges is that because of his ability to switch on defenders, like they might just have him near the 3-point line trying to take that shot away. And especially in the corner where that's going to be such an efficient shot. Like my problem about Bridges is that he can switch on anybody. And if he starts taking a guard on the outside, then it becomes a potential situation where if he's out by the arc, then he's not really available to go ahead and get that rebound. I think the number just is a tad bit too low. Like I project.
That's more why I'm playing more. It's drip too low and it's almost even money at this point. And like I said, the rebound chances have been there in the last in 3 of the last 4. So especially if we're getting more Mavs misses from 3 long rebounds, I think Bridges could get there. I just don't think. I think 4.5 is just really low for a guy that's going to be on the floor for a majority of the game.
I agree. He's had no less than 3 rebounds in, let's see. He's had no less than 3 rebounds in his last 7 games.
Yeah, I mean,
the playoffs. So like he's always going to be around that number. The question
it's so low that he's always going to have, even if with a minute left, if it's close, he could grab 2 rebounds and get over this. So
for sure.
I
don't
like
mind that play at all. I just worry a little bit about the ceiling, but I certainly don't mind it based off the amount of minutes that he's likely to get.
Great. And then obviously, what is a daily bet slip with me without a pra bet? So I'm going to go Jay Crowder over 19.5 pras, playing at least 28 minutes in this series. That jumped to closer to 35 minutes in the 2 road games. So maybe as the adjustments come, Crowder, he sees more time on the floor, especially with Cam Johnson not really having a good series. He's also taking at least 5 threes a game in this series. So if we're talking like pra bet where he's doing a little bit of everything, the volume there on points that could help me get over, especially with him playing a lot, at least 6 rebounds in each game. That helps. His pra average is 20, or his pra numbers this series is 22, 25, 31, 22. Over 19.5. This is, we're just going with averages here. He's playing a lot. I think this is too low. Look at what he's doing this series. So I like Jay Crowder over 19.5 pra.
Yeah, no argument from me. Especially given the point numbers the last 3 games. Like he's just found his confidence. He's getting a ton of minutes. His usage rate has gone up in the last 3 games. Have a very difficult time arguing it. And also, like if you're going with points, rebounds, assists, you can bank off of the fact that the rebounds are going to be fairly consistent. Yep. He's averaged 7 rebounds in the last 4 games. And the assist numbers actually dropped down in his previous game. But the previous 4 games, he had a little bit more than 3 assists per game. So those numbers are going to go back up again tonight, especially at home.
100%. And we're going to change gears. We're going back to the diamond. We're going to do a little bit of fraud or future here. So me and Ben, we're each going to talk about one future. We are playing one future that we think is actually a little overrated, and we're actually going to fade it going forward, whether that is stay away, whether it's wait and see. We'll get into it. But I'm going to start in the AL MVP market because I actually made a bet this morning after seeing Shohei Ohtani hit his first career grand slam, coming on the heels of maybe the best pitching outing of his young MLB career. It's plus 200 at WinBet right now. I played at plus 300, but I still think that the logic behind it still holds value. I played Shohei Ohtani to win AL MVP for the 2nd consecutive year. And Ben, before you, give your response to my bet, let me just give like a little bit of facts on Ohtani this year. His hitting's actually down. He's hitting only 252, has 6 homers, though, 21 RBIs, leads baseball with 30 runs, if that, just helping the stats there. His on-base percentage is down quite a bit, but the process is still there. Ohtani hit around 257 last year, so he's not drawing as many walks. I still think there's room for that to go up. But also, I mean, it's also plus 800 to win Cy Young. The numbers are insane. 3.08 ERA, but he's pitching to a 1.53 FIP. So there's some regression in the field coming his way. He's pitching closer to like a 2.0 ERA, striking out nearly 14 batters, or striking out on the money, 14 batters per 9 innings. Again, like I said, has the grand slam this week, 7 shutout innings, 11 strikeouts last time out. Plus 200 translates to a 33% implied probability. I just think that there is a greater than, I'd even say it's greater a 50% chance that Ohtani wins MVP when it's all said and done. I just don't think that there's any player on the planet that is playing at a high level, both at the plate and while pitching, to justify being more valuable to Ohtani. Not to mention the Angels are off to a great start. I believe they're 20-11 now.
There.
Sure, Trout's hitting well. Sure, Byron Buxton's a human highlight reel, but the value just isn't there for someone that is playing both sides of the field. Sorry, to justify this. I think it's more, is Ohtani going to get hurt this season to ruin this MVP bet? I think if Ohtani plays all, we'll call it 150, avoids serious injury, this is closer to a 50-50 proposition than it is a 67-33.
So from that perspective, you're right about Ohtani's hitting numbers being down. In the grand scheme of things, I don't think it really matters that much, because again,
it's not like he's like hitting 190. He's still like hitting well. It's just not like
he's still hitting well. He's still hitting on base. He's still driving in runs. His weighted on base average continues to be really impressive. The isolated power is good. Like everything about Ohtani from both sides of the plate, is the argument holds up. It's to me, it's the odds, like 2-1 odds for somebody that has had a history of injury, that is still dealing with like an early portion of the season where I'm just anticipating that Ohtani is going to miss time. I don't want it to happen, but enough of a sample over the course of his career in the big leagues indicates that it's likely to happen. Like he had the full season basically of playing as a two-way player last year. Like at some point, you don't think that's going to come back and start to wear him down, maybe in the second half. Like we even saw Ohtani slow down a little bit in the second half, but by that point, the MVP race was already won and done for him. So I think he's the deserving favorite, but I just can't get behind him at such a low number this early in the season, when it's hard for me not to fathom a situation where some sort of injury or rest or regression is going to occur.
So just to counter, because I know I want to ask you who you think is worthy of a bet if you have one right now, just looking at the odds. But
for MVP in the American League?
Yeah, because I know that you don't necessarily agree with my bet, but I see the reason for not wanting to take such a short bet this early in the season. It is May 10th. Season ends in October. That being said, I think that he's good. Like even at other books, he's moving to like closer to -110. Like I'm saying, I think that this is more, the bet's more, is it Ohtani or is it the field? Like that's what I think the bet is it, because if Ohtani doesn't get hurt, which call it what you want, but if Ohtani doesn't get hurt, I don't see any player proving to be more valuable than Ohtani, who's playing both sides. It just
the Mike Trout argument from his MVP seasons.
Exactly.
Right?
But now they have the winning though. Now they're winning. Like Trout's not going to get more votes than Ohtani, no matter how good Trout hits, because like Ohtani's pitching well. Like he's just doing more.
Right. No, that's
why I can't. At this number, I think Ohtani's only going down. And if I need to reassess in July and say, oh, well, Aaron Judge now has, he's up 5 home runs on everyone else, he might win. Byron Buxton is robbing home runs left and right. Maybe he wins. Like, then I'll maybe change my stance and start to hedge out. But at this number, I just think you got to get in here.
If you're looking at it purely from a plus value standpoint, then I get it. And as far as Aaron Judge goes, like Mike Trout beat out Miguel Cabrera when Cabrera had the Triple Crown season. So the home run stats and the power stats aren't necessarily going to be reflected from today's crop of writers that are voting on this award. So I mean, Judge could hit 50 home runs and have an ISO of like 230, and it's still not going to be the type of season that, or I guess his ISO is like 324, so maybe even higher. I just don't know if there's anything more that he can do at this point. I think if I had to take, I like long shots for this award, because I'll give you a name, because it actually kind of goes into one of my picks.
I was gonna tee you up for your future. So
okay,
lead the way.
So it ties in really well, because if I had to take a stab at somebody for AL MVP, I'd go with Jose Ramirez, who's at 10-1 over at WinBet. And as far as the future that I really do like right now, it's Cleveland to win the AL Central at 11-1. It's a wide open division.
Yeah.
Like,
we're just talking
completely wide open. And I mentioned at the beginning of the show, but I'll mention it again. Cleveland's 8-2 in their last 10 games. They are dominant from an offensive standpoint right now. Just scored 12 runs against the White Sox, including 6 in the ninth to be able to come back. They are top 5 in average, in slugging, in weighted on base average. Like every major statistical category, the Guardians are just knocking it out of the park, literally and figuratively. And what the other thing is, when I was doing this research for the piece, and Zach Meisel, who covers the Guardians for The Athletic, put it out. Cleveland is first in average, third in runs, fourth in on-base percentage. They're sixth in slugging, fifth in wins created or runs created plus, first in contact rate, and second in strikeout rate. What they're doing this year, Reed, is antithetical to how so many other teams have been put together offensively, where they're putting the ball in play. Like, it's not home run or strikeout. They're forcing defenses to make plays, but they're also getting on base at a very high clip as well, like fourth in on base percentage. So it's not as if they're going out and they're free swinging. And Shane Bieber, who is still the co-favorite, despite a terrible start to the season to win the Cy Young, is off to his worst start of his career. At some point, you think there's going to be a positive regression to the mean for him. And Cleveland has a history of just developing starting pitching and rock-solid bullpen arms that, if the White Sox continue to melt down, the Twins are a bit hit or miss over the course of the season. They've had some very lucky wins throughout the course of the year. Like, I just buy Cleveland, especially with somebody like Ramirez in the middle of that lineup, who is – his strikeout rate is like less than 8%.
Yeah, he's wild right now.
Unbelievable. And I look at him as somebody that can continue to set the trend. Steven Kwan's had a great start to the year. Like 1 through 9 in their order, they're hitting. And I think their pitching is going to start to perform better compared to where they are middle of the pack right now. So I do think Cleveland, there is value there, both in the MVP race as well as in the division race, because I just don't think people look at them as a contender, and I think they should be.
Again, and all great points, and I think that what I'm trying to do with the long baseball season, what you are seemingly trying to do with the long baseball season with the Guardians bet, is there's a lot of time, and these prices move so slow that I think it might be advantageous right now to take a stab at the Guardians, look at their upcoming schedule. Maybe they could rattle off 5 of 6, get close to the Twins. All of a sudden, they're 5-1. Then you take the Twins at plus 150, you're arbing out. I think that there's a lot of room for growth with the Guardians, who may seem to be hanging around with their hitting splits. And let's just keep it with the AL Central. That should have been the theme of this episode. But my fade is the White Sox to win the World Series at 15-1. Can the White Sox, who have a boatload of talent and all that, figure it out? Sure, they absolutely can. But this is not a team that is 15-1 to win the World Series. Not deserving of this price. This is a lagging number. I mean, just look at the injuries again for this team. Lance Lynn hopes to be back in June. Eloy Jimenez just had hamstring surgery, so who knows when he's coming back. I just think that, and Liam Hendricks is also struggling out of the bullpen as a closer. They just traded Craig Kimbrell before the season, so it's not really working out here. The White Sox off the pace already. Fangraphs projects them to tie the Twins for the division. Looking ahead, and I believe that's a favorable projection, but what really is making this a fade right now, and I'm not touching White Sox futures at all just yet. I'm going to wait until maybe June or July, is listen to the next month of games they have coming up. Just this is to highlight a few. So this is what, 20 some odd games?
Yeah.
They play 7 against the Yankees, 3 against the Blue Jays, 3 against the Rays, and 3 against the Dodgers. I mean, you're telling me this team is going to make up ground on the Twins and even the Guardians with that schedule coming up?
No, and they're kicking the baseball over the field, and their bullpen, which is supposed to be the strength of their team, has had their moments. Hendricks, I think, had a really good game, but that was against the Cubs, where he looked dominant. And the Cubs have had all sorts of issues over the last couple weeks as far as hitting, like one of bottom 3 offense in baseball over the last week or so. The other thing too is that part of the reason that they're struggling defensively, and again, maybe it's a little inside baseball, but they're not shifting. Like La Russa has his infield in the same place pretty much every time. Like there's no movement, there's no reading up on the advanced scouting report. And again, like teams are out scheming the Hall of Fame baseball person that is La Russa. And it's very evident. So between just the lack of focus from the White Sox in the offense to just having really frustrating at bats, like a couple of weeks ago, right before they went on this little 6-game win streak, they were a bottom 6 offense in baseball. This is a team that has the talent to be a top 5 offense. So I think those numbers will start to come back to life.
I agree.
Like they're not dead in the water, but some of the games that they have blown this year, I do believe are going to come back to haunt them. And I think for what was supposed to be a shoo-in to win the division, that is no longer the case. So for now, they're absolutely a fade for me when it comes to the White Sox. Even if they were, I think, maybe 9-1 or 10-1 to start the year, even if it gets down to 20-1, I don't know if I can touch them right now.
Yeah, I know they may seem like a attractive bet to win the division just because of a slow start and stuff like that. And there may be a time to buy them. Like, listen, I'm not saying I'm like off the White Sox forever. Like I was saying, this is a long baseball season. I'm just holding out before I'm not looking at them right now like, oh, this is the time to get in. No, I still think there's room for this price to go even further because while the White Sox are likely to make the playoffs with the extra wild card team and, division, I don't think anyone's necessarily running away from them. So I think that the White Sox can still get in the mix. I just think there's still room for this to go down, especially with their upcoming schedule. Yeah. But that was great chatter on futures market, kind of from all different angles there. We'll see if Ohtani could stay healthy and, I could cash a short little futures bet there. But
and everyone's going to remember this too, Reed, because we can go back, we can find the tape when I was trashing
mark it down.
Pick and he's like, minus 10,000 to an MVP like a month from now. I'm right here to say that I was wrong. Just feels early to me. Feels a little bit early, and I worry about the health. I worry about him being able to stay healthy for a full season. And by the way, if you are looking at Cleveland at 11-1 to win the division, you might as well sprinkle 50-1 on them to win the AL pennant, 100-1 to win the World Series. Even
let's get nuts.
5-1 at some books as well. So like,
there's
some.
We move though. Game of the night. Heat -3, -160 on the money line against the Sixers, +130 on the money line. Total 208.5. Philly obviously coming off 2 resounding victories. Game 4 is a little nervy, but they took care of business. Joel Embiid is back. He is, we'll say, healthy enough to play. He's definitely, listen, he's an MVP caliber player. He's giving it all out there. So they had their chances to maybe put this one out. Now all of a sudden we got a series here. Game 5 in South Beach. Ben, I'll start with you, how you break this game down. Then I'm going to give you a little home teams in Game 5, Nuggets, and my best bet. So that'll be the order of events here. So let's hear it. Heat Sixers, what do you like?
If I'm choosing a side, like my best bet for this game is in a certain prop, which I'll get to in a second. But I do think there is value on Philadelphia. I expect this to be a close game. And I know that you're going to give me some nuggets about how the Miami Heat are due to get their shooting back on track. And from the 76ers side, they're red hot. At some point, that's going to start to regress. But like right now, Joel Embiid is in his own world and he's dominating. And Bam Adebayo just—
that's because he has a concussion. He's in his own world.
He's in his world for a variety
guys seeing stars.
Yes. But I've also seen in this series, like just an adjustment made. And again, no Kyle Lowry, we're starting to realize like actually might be a bigger deal than maybe we've anticipated. James Harden getting some sort of confidence back that he hasn't had in the first 3 games makes a difference. Now, I think a lot of it can still be the Harden of old, where he may not necessarily be making a lot of outside shots, but he's going to get himself to the free throw line. Miami plays so physical that maybe he won't get a call or 2 at home, but he's still somebody that at least now they have to pay attention to. And that's still going to be less of a double team on Embiid. And he's bullied Adebayo when he's come back. And you and I, we both have talked about how we love Adebayo as a strong defensive presence, but matched up against Embiid, like one-on-one, it's not fair right now. So I think the Sixers realize like, okay, Embiid inside in the paint, especially one-on-one, they're going to give him the touches that he needs. But now all of a sudden, if you have Harden making shots and at least the threat of him making shots, it opens it up for everybody else. So if you go inside to Embiid, I think part of the reason that I like his assist prop tonight as well is I think he can look to distribute because other guys are going to get more open looks because there's just going to be more attention paid to him. This feels like as the series starts to come down to the wire, and again, Lowry does make a difference, I think the 3 points feels like a reasonable number there. So purely from a spread standpoint, I do think Philadelphia can keep it close enough to the point where 3 points doesn't feel like it's that much to overcome. I think it's going to be a last possession type of game. And I think that does benefit Philadelphia here.
Yeah, I think excellent points. My one issue, I watched both those games, and I just can't buy into this Philly shooting renaissance going on the road. I mean, I'll just rattle off a few numbers here from my handy dandy notebook. The Sixers, courtesy of John Schumann, he quoted Second Spectrum with this. The Sixers shot 13 of 17, 6 of 8 from 3 in the last 6 seconds of the shot clock. I mean, they were just throwing everything up and it was going in. I mean, it's just this home road split. And I don't know if it has to do with the fact that last season, or the past 2 seasons, really, there weren't like full crowds. I don't know if like teams are really like home court is maybe even more pronounced than usual in the postseason now that we have full crowds back. But I mean, the Heat, 32 of 105 on uncontested field goal attempts in games 3 and 4. Open shots, just missing them. Like good shooters. Tyler Herro, Max Strus. I won't even say Kyle Lowry because I know he's a little banged up with the hamstring. He's going to be out tonight. They shot 7 of 35 from 3. Again, like open shots that could change the game in the fourth quarter. I can't bank on that with the series shifting back to home. So I'm on Miami. I'm just playing the money line for this reason. And then I'll kind of tie a bow on it. But home favorites in game 5, straight up since the 2010 season, 88 and 22, straight up. Off a loss, they are 51 and 14. So I mean, just like
it's a good number.
Staggering numbers. Though, I mean, again, I don't like I think that trends need to be like held like in their own light. You know what I mean? Like you can't. That's not why I'm betting Miami. I'm betting them because of the shot variance. I still think Miami's a better team, but like those are some staggering numbers. We're talking just straight up against the spread. 57 and 51 home favorites since 2010, 2011. Off a loss, they are 35 and 28 and 2. So a little bit better against the spread off a loss, but it's just that straight up mark that team coming back home, especially after a loss. I just think there's something to be said for that, that these maybe they're being a little undervalued. Maybe the people are overreacting.
That's fair. It's a fascinating series too. And again,
yes.
Like the actual numbers, like if you're looking over at both teams, offensive and defensive rating, the 76ers have been the slightly better offensive rated team. Miami's slightly better defensively, but I thought it would be more of a mismatch heading into this series. And it certainly looked that way early on, but again, like Harden makes such a difference here. And it's funny, like I'm still going with the Sixers to cover the 3, even though my best bet of the night is to take the under on James Harden 3-pointers made, which is currently sitting at at minus 130. And part of the reason is like, there's just, it hasn't been there for him. Like he erupted for 6 made 3-pointers. Like in the previous, let's see, previous 8 games, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1. Like I have to go with the numbers here that all of a sudden he's not going to get, like Miami will make adjustments on defense. But I think part of Harden's success is that like they might give him some of those looks. And then with a little bit more space, if he does make a couple, then he's just going to go back to the free throw line, which you know that he's more than capable of doing anyway. So I like the under there. Miami has the second best defensive rating in the postseason. Only the Milwaukee Bucks have been better. And as far as 3-point percentage in the playoffs go, the Sixers haven't been a good 3-point shooting team. They're third worst among active playoff teams in 3-point percentage throughout the postseason. So I think the defense improves for Miami, but I do think having a little bit more flexibility for the Sixers keeps this one close. Like it's probably like an under and a Sixers cover for me, even with Harden going on the under for his 3-point totals tonight.
Yeah, I was going to lay it with the Heat. I think it's like I see 2.5s now. Like that seems like a little bit of an overreaction to the Lowry news. He didn't play all that well in game 4, but I mean, Philly shot 14 of 64 from 3 in games 1 and 2. I know Embiid didn't play, and even for an uptick, but I mean the home road splits are staggering. That's why I think it's gonna be a low scoring game. Like you said, I kind of agree with you how the game's gonna go. This reeks of the home team wins every game. It's kind of how I think Dallas is going to go up until game 7. Like, I just think there's something these teams, I don't think there's much separating these two teams. I think that they're both very good. And, you have Embiid, who's going to be the best player. But I just think there's something to be said for, this team is built on a lot of role players that seem to play better at home. Like, is Danny Green going to go absolutely nuclear from 3 again? Like, I don't know. So I think it's more likely that Max Strus does or Gabe Vincent. And like one last thing on the Harden thing before I give out my last bet for the night, but like I just think it's funny. Let me be upset for a little bit. Let me cope. It's funny that we have to throw, like I think it was Spiro Adidas was calling the game. He's throwing out like vintage James Harden as if he's like some 37-year-old, like on his last legs. Like this is like a farewell, like Al Horford could maybe get the vintage Al Horford treatment.
He gets the vintage treatment. He was a 35-year-old that dropped 30.
Exactly. James Harden, who is expected to sign the richest contract in NBA history this offseason or in the next offseason, is getting vintage James Harden treatment. Like, give me a break, man. Like, that says enough. James Harden, vintage James Harden. Meanwhile, everyone's like, well, if Harden's back, if Harden's back, that changed everything. Well, like, that was his second time scoring more than 25 in like 2 months. Like all of a sudden we see it once and we're all mesmerized. Just I got to see James Harden really put it together because I've seen flashes all year when he was with the Nets. So
I was going to say your perspective on Harden is also a little bit jaded here.
I'm just saying I just thought it was funny, like vintage James Harden, because like it doesn't really happen anymore. I thought that was like some funny stuff. I retweeted someone. I think it was a Nets fan, Sam Latchlow. I'm pretty sure he tweeted. He's like, the sign of like a superstar not being a superstar is that they act surprised when they go off. Like, like
vintage treatment, right?
Yeah, when they vintage treatment you, that's like really sad.
Right. Then you're on the trend to watch. Like,
I agree.
If I get vintage Benny Heiss, like that.
Yeah, that should be like a look in the mirror, like she vintaged me.
Yeah.
But anyway. Man, we're talking though with shooting regression. One of my favorite prop bets for tonight that I'm going to play is Tyrese Maxey under 2.5 threes. So he actually had a 5 for 12 shooting game on the road in that closeout game against the Raptors. Even with that factored in, he's shooting 30% from 3 on the road in the playoffs. So I'm going to bank on some regression. He shot 2 for 10 in Miami in games 1 and 2. Again, I know Embiid didn't play. Now he's back, but I just think it's a little high here. Price isn't that crazy. He just shot crazy. I believe it was 7 for 11 in Philly in games 3 and 4. So I think we're getting that regression back. Maybe a lower scoring game, like we said, maybe some better perimeter defense. So I just think, again, 3 threes, that's a high outcome for him. So I'll go under Tyrese Maxey threes. kind of similar to you with that James Harden prop.
That's a good number because in the last 4 games, he's only attempted 6, 4, 6, and 5 3-pointers to begin with. So
he's on the road, like we were just talking about.
Yeah, like you're already banking on him trying to get, above a sizable number. And, the last game, the last win against Toronto, we chucked up 12 threes, but he hasn't been close.
Yeah.
The rest of the series. So yeah, it feels like a bit of a high number to climb, especially if he's only attempting about 6 3-pointers at the max. He's got to hit half of them. Yeah, very much a stay away. I think that's a great line. I'll probably tell you on that.
Awesome. And that's going to be our show. But before we finish, we do have the community bet. The voices were heard. They chimed in. Ben, they're going against you. They like the Heat -3, kind of on my wavelength. I don't know. I think the 3 points are going to come into play late. I think we're going to get a close game, an iconic Game 5. But the community, the BetSided listeners and viewers, they are taking the Heat -3 as our community bet. Ben, thoughts on the public being against you?
I think the public is making a public play at home. Miami in Game 5, the dominant home road splits. I'm not saying that my side is the sharp side by any means. And again, like the public has done a wonderful job fading me in the past, and it's usually worked out well for them. But I just there is an aspect to this game that makes me feel like with so much of the public on Miami, it is starting to make me feel a little bit better about the 76ers bet. I'll say that.
Well, we will see.
I got to jump on it. That's part of the deal. So I'm getting both sides here.
We'll have a recap on BetSided on what the fallout of Game 5, of course. But if you're on the YouTube page while you're here, you want to get ready for the Byron Nelson tournament this weekend with the PGA, go check out Green on the Greens. It's right below us on our YouTube channel. Also, while you're there, like and subscribe us. So tomorrow you get notified that the new jab cross hook with Andre Petrosky interview. He is fighting on the UFC Fight Night card this weekend. Myself, Ian McMillan, and Fanside MMA editor Amy Kaplan will be tuning in, or will be hosting that event. You should tune in. But Ben, I wish you best of luck on the bets. Hopefully my baseball bet comes out on top, and I'll talk to you next time.
You got it. Go Sixers.
Best of luck, everybody.